Believe it or not, about 25% of students in all grades will avoid going to school at some point in their educational lives. That, according to the nonprofit organization Anxiety Canada. And the pandemic, it seems, only made that worse. What's causing students to miss class, sometimes chronically, and what can parents and teachers do about it? Let's find out more from Deepi Sur, CEO of the Ontario Association of Social Workers, Nathan Kaur, President of the Ontario Teachers Federation, Cheryl Boswell, Executive Director of Youth Mental Health Canada, and family counselor Alison Schaefer. And it's great to have everybody around our table for this discussion tonight. Cheryl, let's just make sure we all know what we're talking about here. School avoidance or chronic absenteeism, call it what you want, define it. What is it?
That's a good question. Well, it's a complex mental health disability that is presents very individually. So each story of school phobia, avoidance, and absence looks quite different.
It's interesting you called it a mental health issue as opposed to kids just screwing off and not wanting to go to school.
Exactly.
So it's not.
And
we're
all
talking the former,
issues
not the latter.
impact mental health and wellness. So, whatever the causes are, the impact and how it presents in young people is intense school-induced anxiety that interferes with a student's ability to access and manage an education.
How much of it's going on right now?
Well, I mean, this is, the rates are increasing. People are tracking attendance more because of COVID and virtual learning. So before the pandemic, this was an issue. In some schools, 20-25%, up to, I've worked with some schools, 80% of the student population is absent due to mental health challenges and disabilities.
When you say absent, you have to be away for how long for that to constitute?
Yeah, the definition of chronic absence is 2 days a month. So total of about 18 days a year, a school year. So, chronic absence is a huge issue.
Gotcha. Let's look at a quote here. This is Maria Rogers, Canada Research Chair in Child and Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing from a Globe and Mail editorial. Sheldon, I'll ask you to bring this graphic up and I will read along for those listening on podcast. Chronic absenteeism, which is defined as, here we go, missing 10% or more of school days, about 2 days for each month, had already been extensively studied by education and psychology researchers prior to the pandemic. It has been linked with a multitude of adverse student outcomes from early to late childhood, poor academic achievement, lower emotional well-being, and early termination from high school. Importantly, high rates of absenteeism among students in the earliest grades can have a snowball effect throughout a child's schooling experience. Students who are chronically absent as early as kindergarten are far more likely to drop out of high school compared with children who are not routinely absent in the early grades. Nathan, pick up the story if you would. How has this worsened thanks to COVID-19?
I think one of the largest challenges is that why are the students absent? I can appreciate your perspective and pointing to mental health, but there must be more reasons than that on the table, especially coming out of a pandemic where we still have illnesses happening within the schools, and we still have teachers that are looking into their classrooms and the absences are occurring. And whose obligation is it to find out why and to do something about it?
Well, we're going to certainly explore that in our conversation here. Tell us what's at stake academically when you miss a lot of school.
You're behind. You have to catch up, and it creates anxiety for the student, and the teacher then has to try to differentiate, change that programming to accommodate those absences, and it creates stress for not just the student, but the system as a whole. And I'm sure the parents out there who are dealing with a child at home when they should be in school, it's hard for them as well.
Deepi, can you speak to the mental health angle in this as well, as opposed to, because when we think of kids cutting class, we often think because they'd rather hang out at the mall, or they want to go smoking behind the school and just don't want to go to class. This is not that, what we're talking about here.
Well, I think, my colleagues have pointed to a couple of really important things. The pandemic had a huge impact on students. Three things come to mind for me. The first is we've seen a rise in mental health issues being reported by children and youth, things like bullying, worried sleep, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, relationship troubles. Secondly, learning gaps, right? We've talked about kids going to school and then being virtual and returning back and masking. That's been difficult. And if you're worried about falling behind with your grades or worried you're not matching up to your peers, you're going to be worried about your success in your future. And then thirdly, I think a lot about socialization, social development. Missing out on school meant you can develop peer networks, develop friendships, you can conflict resolve the same way. Those things contribute to absenteeism, which, as you pointed out, is a sign of something bigger going on. And we have an opportunity to think about that with mental health supports right in the school.
Let me pick up on not just what you miss in terms of academics and grades when you don't go to school, but the social interaction skills you need to develop just by being there. What do you miss out when you miss school?
We're social creatures, right? Our motivation is to go be social, and then learning is a byproduct of that. We know that besides class size, one of the biggest impacts on education is whether or not you perceive that your teacher likes you. Your grades go up when you like your teacher, you like your classmates. And so we send our children off to these institutions that are basically the second social institution of their lives. If they can't find their connection, their purpose, meaningfulness, kind and caring attitudes where they can flourish, then they're going to shut down. And the truth is, there is a culture issue happening at our schools right now. If you feel that they're not safe, if you feel invisible, you're not seen, you're not understood, you're being put through a meat grinder, you're not going to perform. And so I think just the same way that we're seeing that in the workplace, people are quietly quitting and not wanting to come back and go back into the workplace to work. We're seeing students that have said, I could lie in bed and watch YouTube. I can get my work done in a couple of hours in the afternoon, hand it in. I don't really need to show up and put up with the excruciating social environment of our high schools right now. So I think there is a bigger problem that we have to look at, and these are kids trying to self-manage around it.
You say the second social institution, the first being?
The family.
Their family.
The family unit.
Yeah, there we go. Gotcha. Cheryl, let's get, and again, we're talking about those who have, as your book there suggests, a phobia about going to school. We're not talking about people who are just being truant here. Why don't they want to go?
It's a good question. Youth Mental Health Canada did the first survey on school phobia in Canada. There's not the research in Canada. There's not the legislation. There's not the needs-based educational accommodations or funding. There's not the national leadership in elementary and secondary for students with permanent disabilities, or direct funding to families to support their students, their children with mental health disabilities. So, when we look at all those, so in terms of the survey, what we found, which was shocking to me because it's quite opposite to what you see in international research, is the average age for warning signs of school phobia, 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So early on, the school building represents so much to some students, whether it's performance anxiety, social anxiety, whatever it is. And when I was in the Netherlands in October at an international conference on school attendance, it was echoed by a number of researchers. They're starting to identify 5 years old as the early warning signs. That's really important information for us if we're going to look at early intervention, preventative, proactive, practical strategies to supporting students. So, because unsupported mental health disabilities increase suicide risk factors. So this is not just, they're absent, what can we do? This is a moral imperative. This is, as an education system, education is a service. There's human rights, compliance, and obligations that are required. And it's a social responsibility, taking better care of each other.
All right, before we get there, though, I still want to know where they are. They're not going to class? DP, where are they going?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's a lot happening. They're at home. Yeah. They're having trouble getting out of bed sometimes.
Wait a minute, they're at home. But presumably they've got a parent or a guardian at home who's saying, time to get up and get going.
Or you've got a parent or a guardian that's trying to navigate a few things, virtual work or going into work, returning to work. They've got other kids in the home. You've also got kids who aren't showing up at school or maybe try to get in the school building and can't. Think about the very first time you expressed your worry or your anxiety or a sadness or a concern about cyberbullying or friendships might have been at school. And if you don't have the right supports in that school setting, like a social worker or another mental health professional, then that early prevention and detection, it doesn't happen. In fact, it gets missed. And we know there's not enough school social workers to support our education system across Ontario.
And it leads to a mental health crisis. So, very emotionally dysregulated young people, isolating at home, losing their peer network, the support network from school, not able to function. Parents having to give up jobs or decrease hours for work to stay at home with their children. I mean, it's a huge issue, being told it's the parent's responsibility to force the kid into school, and no supports provided by the school to find a way to get back in.
Let me pick up on that. Nathan, you're the Ontario Teachers Federation rep here today. So what does a teacher feel their obligation is when a student is perpetually absent, school phobic, as it were?
I think any good teacher is going to try their best to do as much as they can in that situation, but they're not trained social workers. They're not school psychologists. Their job is to provide the curriculum, provide learning. You need to create an incredible learning atmosphere to do that. But there's so much more that is expected of our education system today that wasn't expected in the past. We are talking about turning to the education system to assist in this issue, but we're also pushing on a full inclusionary model within classrooms. And the teacher is expected not just to teach to the middle, but to diversify their teaching all the way from one spectrum of a learner to another.
No, I get you. But
and they don't have time to be able to, they're going to try their best.
I get you, but does a teacher see it as his or her responsibility to, for example, phone the parents, find out why the kid's not there? That kind of thing.
I think if there's no one else to do it, they're going to try, they're going to attempt as much as they can to make that connection, to follow up. But there's only so much you can do when you have so many other obligations on the table.
And I think what Nathan has to say, I don't know if you're going to say the same thing, is the teacher can't do it alone.
Yeah,
it's a school-wide
exactly.
approach that's needed, and that's what I get at with this book, supporting students with school phobia for families and schools, that we need a very
takes a system.
comprehensive, coordinated approach with involvement from everyone, whether, through starting with the education support team.
Well,
where
let me
you
get
have
some facts
school
on the
admin.
table on that.
Okay.
Here we go. Sheldon, middle of page 3 here. Let's get this graphic up, because these are the supports for students in school, sort of. Most elementary schools report less than one full-time guidance or teacher counselor, while most secondary schools report one full-time guidance or teacher counselor. In terms of mental health supports, 1 in 4 schools reported no available psychologist. More than half of schools reported having a full-time social worker. Most reported an option to connect virtually to a psychologist or social worker. And more secondary schools have a regular youth or social worker than elementary schools. Okay, so that's where it's at. Do you think that's adequate?
That's astounding. So think about that, where our kids are, our children are, our youth are, each and every single day. We have 20,000 social workers in Ontario. Of course, not all of them are in schools. We have, social workers across a number of settings. 4,800 Ontario schools and less than 1,000 school social workers. And if you're a school social worker, you might be having 5, 10, or 13 schools on your caseload across a large geography, which means less visibility for students, teachers, school administrators, boards who are working so hard to try to wrap around these students. And that means we're not there for that early prevention, the early detection, and connecting people back in the community. So we've been asking our government to step up, fund 1 social worker per school so that you have that support system and you can create that care and that well-being each and every day.
Full-time.
Full-time.
How close are we to that?
Well, let's hope your listeners and our government are listening today. But we do have conversations, and we've been asking for that budget to be part of that regulation and part of the regulatory bodies each and every day.
Yeah, Yes, we need more. 100%, completely agree. But I also know that the last thing a student wants to do is be excused from class so that they can go have their therapy session down the hall and all their friends know it. You know, that a lot of what we're talking about from a mental health perspective is the preventative part of creating healthy relationships. What better place to have healthy relationships than with your peers in your classroom? Like, that is a healing environment if we do it right. So I think we need teacher training around how to build a classroom culture that is cohesive and bonding and healing, instead of having to wait until there's a mental health breakdown and then we have to send them down the hall to a mental health professional. I think we need to be more preventative. That's
Follow up on that, though, with parents. I'm sure we've got parents watching or listening right now for whom this is an issue and they are at their wits' end and they don't know what to do. What do you recommend?
in terms of getting their child engaged in school. So again, you're talking about complete school, I would say part of the spectrum that's more severe than what I see in my counseling practice. In my counseling practice, I see a lot of kids that have got disengaged from learning, and they have basically think that school's a bit of a joke. You know, we can make it up in credit recovery. You know, I don't have to hand in any of my things. They'll just take 2 papers and
Okay, that's not phobia, that's truancy.
It's a poor attitude about what is happening for academia for them. And they're disengaged learners is what I would call them, which I think is different than having an anxiety as an underlying piece to that. So when we look at that, a lot of it is about empowering parents to be able to set limits and boundaries. It's like parents who don't have a hard time getting their kids to bed at night or taking their tech away or getting them to school. There's a big piece of this, which is about empowering parents to be able to say, your child needs more boundaries and guardrails for them to be successful. And as frustrated as you are, let's get those parents resourced so that they feel empowered enough to say, I need to step up. The population that I work with, and I agree, it's not, you know, it's my sector in my private practice may be unique, so this isn't going to apply to everybody, but those parents need to step up.
But that's a different...
That looks different.
Yes, I think it's a difference.
That's
I think
different
it's
from this.
Yeah.
That looks different than stressors like unstable housing,
Right.
Food insecurity. I can't deal with the racism or the cyberbullying. That looks really different, and we know that's directly linked to absenteeism, which is a little different than disengaged students.
Absolutely.
The
And there's a
commonality
mix.
exists. The commonality exists that when a student is absent, someone needs to find out why.
Who?
And who is going to do that?
Yeah.
And you know what? The teacher is there. They have that connection. They have that relationship. They're the point person often in that, especially in the elementary school system, where they're the classroom teacher. In high school, it's a little different. You know, there's that division within the different subjects, and you kind of turn to, well, who is going to make that phone call home? But then it comes down to time. It comes down to the amount of students in a classroom, the amount of time available outside of the classroom, because you're not making the call on your lunch break while you're making photocopies or running around.
I get you, but I mean, presumably there is a list of potential options here. Either the principal's going to do it, or the guidance counselor's going to do it, or the teacher's going to do it, or
the social worker.
Or the social worker. Somebody in that setting has to be responsible for looking into this. Who is that person?
And I would suggest if the expectation is that it's the teacher, you have to give them the time to do so.
Right.
But if the
Ding, ding, ding.
expectation that there's a social worker there, and you have that ability,
Well,
and you have
imagine
that
a social
people,
worker and a teacher working together to
and also
get to the
someone
bottom of it.
who's trained, because
Right.
you're gonna maybe encounter some significant major issues at a home. That how can we all be specialized in as an educator, as a teacher,
That's a great point,
where there
Nathan.
may be some individuals that do have that expertise, all the way from how to address them to make a welcoming environment to dealing with significant mental health issues.
Yeah, and I think it's not a choice, you know, not to do. So, you know, if you create an education support team, you have everyone working together, including the family, a critical component of this. The assessment forms, step by step, are in this guidebook. And then the action plans, you need an education support plan, you need a reentry plan, and all students need a mental wellness action plan. So when they're struggling, they know what to do.
Okay, hang on. I need to know more about that. Every student in
I believe
2 million students in the province, they all need a mental health action plan.
mental wellness
Mental
action
wellness.
plan.
What does that look like?
good question. So often what happens in the clinical setting is, a young person or an adult is in crisis and they might make a safety contract. And there's different terminology, but it's often called a safety contract. And it often doesn't work because someone in a crisis is dysregulated. So they're not at their best, they're struggling and whatever. So the best for me, for all young people, is create a mental wellness action plan. So you look at, it's sort of developing self and emotional awareness. You are aware of your stressors, your triggers, your resources in the community, resources in the school, making those kinds of resources transparent. So there's more awareness of, a social worker is available, a psychologist in the school, child and youth care worker, this is what they do. In the community, who can I go to?
Who makes that plan?
Young people.
They make it with
And
just
they can
on their own?
update it. There's also apps that you can use. There's a brother and sister from the United States, the Not Okay app, free. You put in 5 trusted contacts in it. Also identifying trusted adults in your school community. And I think what you were mentioning earlier is what we need to do is build mental wellness protective factors in schools. So increasing suicide risk factors, we've done a lot of research internationally. We know it's a two-pronged kind of thing that increases. So a thwarted sense of belongingness, so you don't feel you belong, and you feel like a burden. And, so if we really engage young people in curriculum that's meaningful and relevant, so they're more engaged in what's happening, using their strengths and motivators, but also looking at building a sense of community, connection, and belonging.
Let's get some feedback on that. What do you think of this idea?
Yeah, I think it's great to have a wellness action plan. And I love that we're calling it preventative because the issues are longstanding. And we know 70% of issues in child and that happen in adolescence start in childhood, mental health issues. And so if we don't start early and we don't work in schools and in doctors' offices and in the communities that children frequent with their families, we're going to see long-term impacts. So building that wellness plan is crucial. But you know what? So is the stability of the support to do that. And so while children and adolescents can do that work, they also need a trained professional to work in a setting that can help them with that. In the school, outside of the school, at home, working with their families, addressing issues like racism and bullying that have been on the rise, like violence. These are important things that are impacting kids and their decision-making, their self-esteem each and every day.
A mental wellness action plan for each student? What do you think?
It just needs to be built into the entire educational system. It shouldn't feel like such a standalone thing. I think that is where maybe the stigma comes in. We should be teaching kids that from all the way from daycare all the way through. That should just be part of what we do. And that's why I agree with you in that I come from a long line of teachers, a lot of friends that are teachers, and they're overburdened. They're told to do everything. I got to socialize your kid, I got to teach your kid, I get that they're overburdened, but we need to decide as a society what is going to be the most important thing and where are we going to put our resources. Do we need to get that first report card out in November, or can we spend September getting to know one another? We can decide to do it differently. We need educational reform. We need to put the soft emotional learning piece has to be a priority. I mean, if we don't, we're seeing what happens when we don't. Who cares if you have somebody who's got a PhD in engineering who's suicidal? We have to put it as a priority.
And that was the benefit of COVID, that it uprooted everything we knew about education and the school building, and this is the status quo. We were capable of really being innovative and being very needs focused. How do we engage students? How do we, what do we do in terms of virtual learning and to really there were a lot of benefits for, from the experience of COVID going through it, and that schooling models can change, and that we can direct the way that we do education to the needs of students.
Can I circle back to something with you, though, Nathan? And that is, we talked about students who are not engaged because they're not particularly interested in what's going on in the classroom. Do you think a change in curriculum would help address that issue?
I think any changes of curriculum, a good teacher is going to put in place what they need to put in place. But it's how you put in place, it's how you connect that curriculum to the student. Often what we do in learning, it's not, it's important what you learn, but teaching children how to learn is the ultimate goal.
For sure.
Right? And so curriculums come and go. What the core of the piece is that we're providing them, but if we can meet the needs of the student, and sometimes that is adapting the curriculum to what they're interested in or how they see themselves relevant in the future. Right now, when needs are not being met, it's like a fight or flight, and we're talking about the flight today. But there's another conversation on the table where there's a fight, and when needs are not being met, and we see both of those coming out today in the classroom. Needs are not being met. Some of it's avoidance, some of it's mental health, some of it's violence in the classroom. It does exist, and we just needed to do a better job.
Okay, we're less than 5 minutes to go here, and I know Stephen Lecce, the education minister, is watching, because he watches this program every night. I know that.
Does he?
Even when we don't do education, I know he watches all the time. Anyway, we got 4 smart people here to give him some advice. Fire away. What does he need to do?
Start with putting a school social worker in every single school across the province, working with the team, working with your education professionals so they can help identify these issues early and also connect people back in the community. We don't want kids pulled out of class for therapy sessions and counseling sessions. We want them connected to the right resources, right time, and managing and regulating their emotions early on.
Okay, you said we have 4,800 schools. We have social workers in 1,000 schools.
Less than 1,000 school social workers out there.
So
we want 4,800 schools with at least one social worker in a school. Imagine what that feels like to be able to know the social worker in your school, to be able to walk down the hall, say hello, know that you have a place that you can talk and you can get connected.
Okay, hang on. Should I do the math here? How much do you have to pay to get a social worker?
Well, I'll tell you this, the recent budget is over $30 billion announced around mental health in schools in particular. Certainly that's a small dent to put one social worker into schools.
I'm going to say it's $75,000 to put a social worker in a school. Does that sound right?
Sure.
$75,000 times, if there's 1,000 in, then we need 3,800 more. Okay, that's $285 million for social workers alone.
Now,
Can we do that?
Don't forget, some schools are only a couple hundred students. So certainly you can think about geography. Northern schools, the needs are different. So we need to think about geography, but what we know is at least one access to school social worker based on the geography and based on the number of students per school is crucial, because that's where it starts. The conversations, you were talking about engagement and talking about school stressors, because absenteeism is just a sign that something more is going on. Stressors.
Talk to Stephen Lecce.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about this great poster that we used to have that said something like, wouldn't it be a great day when every school was fully funded and the Navy had to hold a bake sale to get a new,
Fighter jet or whatever.
Yeah, right? We have the money. We have the money. We need to put the money where the money is needed. So, Stephen Lecce, put some budget behind this so that we can get teachers trained, so that we can slow things down to get these kids back re-engaged. We can deliver that curriculum eventually. I believe ABC, acceptance, belonging, and then the delivery of curriculum. And if we don't get these school communities re-engaged as safe havens for kids to want to go and be with friends and to be seen, then they will start to flourish. So we need to slow it down and fund those teachers and slow down education. Double the salaries of teachers. How's that?
That's always
Is that good? Put that in your calculator.
I don't think
Let's
that-
respect
I don't
teachers
think
and
Nathan's
what they do.
He's not going to
I think
object to that.
that's a tough ask.
Nathan, yes, I was going to say.
How long have you been asking for that? Yes.
Aside from doubling teacher salaries, what else would you want to recommend?
Let's just work together to meet the needs of students and be thoughtful in asking the right questions. If we're talking about student absences, there's a solution to that, but we need to know why people are away, whether it is those anxieties of school, the curriculum not connecting with them. The panel should be for students here that are not attending school.
That's a great follow-up idea. I like that. Cheryl, last word to you.
I think we need to value young people, we need to value education, and we need to value families with action. I think all schools need to have a photocopiable guidebook on supporting students with school phobia, so they've got the resources and the coordinated, comprehensive supports and action to do it. I think all schools need to have a school phobia workshop. Or attend a training course that I'm starting on Saturday for professionals. I think we need national leadership. I think families need direct funding to support, for other families with children who have disabilities, so that they know what their children need to access and manage an education.
Disabilities is coming up next. That's the next part of our program. That's Cheryl Boswell from Youth Mental Health Canada, along with Deepi Sir from the Ontario Association of Social Workers, and on the other side of the table, Nathan Kaur from the Ontario Teachers Federation, Alison Schaefer, the family counselor. It's great to have all four of you here at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Steve.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.